Hey Zwifters, I'm Simon Schofield, and this is the Zwiftcast. Coming up on this episode, well, we never saw that one coming. A new course drops out of a clear blue sky. Zwift's new terms of service. No, don't switch off. Nobody ever reads them, but they're important. And subtle, or maybe not so subtle, changes to power-ups. What's that all about? Plus lots of Zwift chats with a slightly different lineup this week. There's me, as usual. There's Nathan, also as usual. Your dude, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going, Simon? A little tired. Just waking up, Long Beach, but doing good.
Yeah, well, we'll get to the Long Beach thing in a minute. And there's Greg Leo with us, noted Zwift racer and sometime podcaster himself. Hey, Greg, how are you?
Very good, thank you. I'm not as tired as Nathan.
Excellent. Well, we've been conversing for the last 3 hours. You are something of an early riser, it must be said. Okay, well, we'll be checking in also with Shane later on. Don't worry, this one is not a llama-free zone. Okay, well, there's a bit of a story behind this slight change in personnel. I know people love hearing about people doing dumb stuff. It kind of makes you feel better, I find. I think it's called Schadenfreude. Anyway, I was supposed to be where Nathan and Greg are right now, which is at the Long Beach HQ of a certain cycling game we all know and love. All three of us in the same room, I thought would make a nice polished podcast, but the best laid plans and all that. I packed, prepped, and fetched up at the airport, but computer said no. I was denied boarding. Now, I had remembered a few days before to see if my ESTA, which is a piece of paper you need to get into the United States, was valid and in date, and then I forgot to check it. And guess what? It wasn't valid, that is. Long story short, the check-in peep said, no way, dude. And despite a desperate last-minute ESTA application, I was not in seat 23C as planned as the wheels lifted off the runway. I felt something of a fool, it has to be said. Anyway, it turns out I'm not the only Brit heading to Long Beach who's been caught out like this. According to one of my mates at HQ, that made me feel about 3% better. Anyway, enough of all that. Let's get on with some Zwift stuff.
Simon, at least you're probably feeling a little bit more comfortable than us. We're recording on the edge of my hotel room bed on an ironing board right now, so you're probably a little bit more. You're probably in a more comfortable situation, at least.
Ironing boards are very, very useful things. Nathan and I have recorded in many different setups in hotel rooms, let me tell you. Now, normally we do get a little bit of notice about what might be coming up, Nathan, don't we? But not this time. The Giro d'Italia course landed pretty much from nowhere. It was a complete surprise to me, and we got none of the usual trailers or teasers. No Eric Min Strava ride, for example. We'll talk about the course shortly, but Nathan, I'm kind of speculating on the basis of no knowledge whatsoever, but that's what we do here, that this was perhaps tied up with last-minute business negotiations and the like with RCS owners of the Giro d'Italia. Fair guess, do you think?
I think that might have been going on. I mean, definitely you're recreating grounds where, and branding and things like that, where people, have a stake. But at the same time, it might also been like, can we get it done? Yeah. Like there might also been a reality of like, how quickly did they turn this around and stuff like that, and is it a go and those kinds of things. So there might have been the Zune factor as well as most likely figuring out where the stakes do lie as far as the business side of things go. So I think that's a fair bet.
I don't want to resort to national stereotypes either, but negotiating with Italians can sometimes be complicated. Greg, it's event only at the moment and not on the calendar permanently, but I assume you rode it. What do you reckon?
It's a really cool course. I mean, one thing that has been interesting about it is how much time people are putting into figuring out the pacing in the course and also what bikes to use. So we have the drop shop combined with this sort of unique course that has a flat TT into a bit of a climb. Everyone in Zwift racing chat was talking about like, what are the right wheels to use? What's the right frame? Should I use a TT bike? Should I use a climbing bike? How hard should I go on the flat? How hard should I go on the climb? I mean, people were doing simulations and things. It was kind of an interesting, few days before those events started.
Yeah, yeah. And Shane has a little to say about that in just a few moments' time, actually. Zwift are already best mates with ASO, as we know, ASO being the owners of Tour de France. They've got a partnership with them. Looks like now they're going to be best buddies, or at least good buddies, with RCS. Good thing, Greg, do you think, to be in bed with these huge cycling organizations?
Well, I don't think it can hurt. I mean, maybe there are some aspects that constrain Zwift a little bit, but Zwift is trying to, seems like, put themselves on the same playing field as these big organizations, and show that they're a big player in cycling. And I think that's what they're doing by partnering with all these groups.
Absolutely. Seat at the top table. Nathan, do you think ordinary Zwifters care as much as maybe we do about pro cycling partnerships? I mean, do you think, the Zwifter that jumps on just to do 25 minutes of pootling around the place, do they care that they get a Giro d'Italia course and Zwift are best buddies with all these super important people?
That's a really interesting question because yesterday it kind of came up in a conversation at HQ about demographics and stuff. And I said in response to a similar conversation, when you walk into a bike shop, you have hybrids, you have race bikes, you have mountain bikes, and I might gravitate toward the mountain bikes and don't pay as much attention to what the ASO or RCS are doing. But there are most definitely the individuals who will walk into that bike shop and care very much about the road bike and very much about the Dura race with the electronic shifting and what Mark Cavendish is doing or who is winning the Giro or whatever might be happening as far as that goes in pro cycling. So you definitely want to, as you get more global, hit every part of the cycling genre. And I think the base of the users up front have cared a whole lot. I think as we
Yeah.
do become more, what do we want to say here? General population, go out to more general cycling too. It won't have as much care, but that doesn't mean you don't focus in on that part of the bike shop, essentially.
I also think, Greg, that there's a useful seasonal aspect to this because, of course, the Grand Tours tend to be in summer, and as we know, summer is not but the best of times for Zwift. Understandably, we know the reasons why that is. So this kind of, I think, it sort of helps extend the season a bit. Do you?
Yeah, oh, for sure. I think one thing that's interesting about this is maybe people who aren't avid Zwifters can, watch the Tour de France, and they can then jump in Zwift and have an experience that's relevant to what they've just seen, right? So that kind of thing didn't happen before. I couldn't watch the Tour de France or any big bike race, and
Yeah.
then I could go outside and ride around and pretend I was Mark Cavendish, but I couldn't.
We've all done that, Greg. We've all done that.
Yeah, so I think I think that's a big part of this is bringing people in to Zwift who are avid cycling fans who can then come into Zwift and have an experience relevant to what they're seeing on TV.
Yeah, yeah, very good point. Finally, on this, just for now, use of the course in terms of its availability is quite sparing. Frustrating, Nathan? Smart, or maybe just part of the deal with RCS? Who knows?
I think it's a little bit frustrating. I did see on the social media posts a lot of asks about, well, is this available? When again? When again? When again? At the same time, it might have been what the marketing was looking for. Like, oh, they're asking for it to come back. They're asking for it to come back. And there's a little bit of that, like, wanting what you can't have.
Yeah, like the McRib marketing.
Exactly. So only available for a limited time, right? So I think that might be working a little bit. I do think it's smart to make more offerings perhaps down the road because, a lot of work probably went into developing this space, so, and I wouldn't doubt that that's going to happen, but having some exclusivity around it while the Giro is going on, maybe a smart move. Yes, I would agree. It is very frustrating. Maybe for those who didn't know it was coming, that first thing you said about suddenly it's kind of just dropped out of the sky, maybe a little bit more planning then to let people know, hey, this will be exclusive. Plan your stuff, because just getting on and riding, like we've said over and over again, takes a little bit more time to play this game than it does to sit down and, throw down some Overwatch or something.
Yeah, yeah. No, like a week's. I don't know. I didn't count actually, but it didn't seem very long between the announcement and the actuality when, Like you say, people like to plan ahead and, maybe a couple of weeks out. But I'm sure there are reasons for that, as we discussed just a few moments ago. Okay, well, Shane rode the new course, of course, and he used an interesting little pacing tool, which I think Greg referred to a moment ago. I'd not heard of this before, so here's Shane on the new course and this pacing tool he used. Well, good day, Shane, mate. You're going to be popping in and out of this episode of the podcast. So let's get your thoughts on this bolt from the blue, as we described it, which was the sudden arrival of the new course. You ridden it, mate?
I have. I'm not sure I want to ride it again, but I liked it. It was only short, but the reason why I liked it is because it was a perfect course to apply good pacing strategy to. Because the course was so short and sharp and the hill at the end is so brutal, I thought, how am I going to get the best out of what I've got? So I jumped into Best Bike Split. If people don't know what Best Bike Split is, it will take in almost every variable you can think of and apply what it knows to give you the best pacing that you should be applying for a certain course, any sort of course. And the Giro was in there, or the Giro Prologue was in there. So I've put in my estimated FTP, my estimated weight. Of course, my weight was correct, so I put that in there. And the estimated the bike type and the wind direction and every variable you can think of, because this is built for outside, but you can apply this pacing strategy for inside as well. Watts are watts, courses are courses. So it sort of told me to, go out at the start for the first 6 kilometers under FTP. Now, it's a sub 20-minute effort, and it's telling me to go under FTP for the first half. I'm like, that's kind of weird. But then the hill, you go over FTP for all of that hill, and it's a grind. So I jumped on there, did all the math, and applied that pacing strategy, and it worked really well for what I had. Both Dr. Stephen Lane and I were side by side here in the Llama Lab racing each other up, and it made for a pretty good race there in the end. But that last 2 kilometers is brutal, absolutely brutal.
I've not come across that Best Bike Split toy. That sounds a good little tool, actually.
It's not bad at all. It was, I think, bought out by Training Peaks in 2014. So they're self-confessed math nerds behind it, and obviously lovers of bikes and all things sporty. It's used quite a lot, and even by the pros. I got a message from the team behind Best Bike Split thanking me for using their tool for my little video, and I just had a bit of a chat to those guys about how they use it and who uses it, and it's pretty good. It's pretty damn good. So if people are out there looking to get the best out of themselves for a time trial, it's definitely worth having a look at. For a group ride, just hold the wheel. You'll be right.
Yeah. But it only applies to real-world courses, so you couldn't use it for Watopia Reverse, Figure of Eight, or something like that.
Well, you could import Watopia if you want. I'm guessing you could import your own TCX, GPX, and it will look at the terrain. Wind, well, there's not much wind, and the Zwift physics are close enough to get a good pacing strategy. Look, all you're after is something better than what you'd guess. So, I mean, for the Giro course, it's under FTP until the hill by about 20 or 30 watts, and then over FTP on the hill by about 20 or 30 watts. It's quite as simple as that. So you'll be able to import a different course from anywhere. So it works real world or fake world.
Interesting. Oh, people should take a look at that. No doubt guided by lots of helpful advice in your video. However, the course has now gone, I think, actually, as we record. I don't think it's around. We're going to see it come back, though.
I hope so. It's a good, short, sharp stage race. Well, it's a prologue. I'd like to see it pop up in different events every now and then. Hopefully, if we get the ability to, run our own events, personally, I'll run a few events on there for sure.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Hear more from you later, Shane. Thanks for now. They're long, always, and written in legalese, always. Nobody ever reads them unless they change, and then only a very few people read them, and even then they don't read all of them. I'm talking about terms of service or end-user license agreements, and Zwift have just changed theirs, and it has ruffled a few feathers, it's fair to say. The changes do give Zwift the power to possibly do some things if they want to, or if they see a real need. One of those is to stop people streaming. They now have this power, and that's what's caused most of the internet's outrage. Here's a quick example.
Zwift now say that you can't live stream anymore. I am no longer, according to the letter of their law in their terms of service, allowed to broadcast my Zwift races live to you on Twitch, on YouTube. I'm not allowed to broadcast their platform anywhere, according to the letter of their law. They said it should be okay, but should just feels fluffy, doesn't it, when it comes to lawyers. I thought Zwift was all about community, and these terms of service feel counter to that.
I'll discuss this with Nathan and Greg momentarily, but first let's pull in a llama. Rainmaker, DC Rainmaker, man of much influence. He got a bit huffy about the new Zwift Terms of Service, Shane. Was he overreacting?
Yeah, probably a little bit. Letter of the law, I guess, of what they'd written. He was correct. And in the terms of service, it said something about, there's heavy restrictions on using Zwift and republishing, rebroadcasting, etc. for commercial ventures. It was, look, let's call it what it is. It was good clickbait.
I do think Ray was kind of guilty of sowing a bit of panic around this. Oh my God, Zwift have now got the power to stop me streaming. They're going to stop me streaming. I just think that's most unlikely in the vast majority of cases, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's not the case. It's a perfect clickbait headline of Zwift bans online streaming. That's going to get people's attention, but it's also going to spread misinformation, which is not correct. Of probably the top 10 people in the world who would be impacted by this, I'd be up there, I'm sure, because I ride Zwift all the time. I stream it. I use it for my Llama lab tests. I rebroadcast it. I'd be affected by this. But the first thing I did, I sent Zwift an email just saying, hi guys, just want some clarification on my usage being okay. And they're like, absolutely, not a problem whatsoever. So it's just common sense. Pretty much all these companies have terms and services which will protect them, and they'll only come out and, I guess, flex their muscle there when they need to. And I think if you've got good intent, which is what all streamers have, I think it's okay. But again, in this day and age of the internet, we all want something to be, in a huff about today. And then we'll forget about it tomorrow and move on.
No, and I think just to wrap up your contribution on this, I don't think any ordinary Zwifter needs, whether they stream or not, and even if they do stream a lot, I don't think they need to have any concerns about this. Do you?
No, not at all. And look, I think if we read, as I've said, close enough of any terms and services of any product that we don't own, we can safely assume that any company has something they can use against you. So we're talking, I'm coming from a different place here as well, because I've been taken off of YouTube for violating their terms of service, apparently. Yeah. So that's the ultimate, smackdown, I guess. So anything less than that, to me, it's like, nah, that's not a problem. I don't see this as a problem.
No, I don't either. Okay, thanks very much, Shane. We'll catch up with you later in the podcast. Greg, I do think we can be fairly straight here, building on what Shane said. Ordinary Zwifters who stream for fun are absolutely not going to be stopped from doing this, are they, as far as you know? Yeah,
and I think pretty quickly, everyone I know that streams, there was some talk like, oh, is this going to prevent us from streaming? And, the consensus was, no, Zwift isn't going to stop anyone just for streaming for fun who's, actually putting content out there that helps Zwift, really. I mean, all that does is build the Zwift brand. It's good for Zwift. I can't see them ever stopping anyone from streaming that has, good intention and isn't harming the platform in any way.
Mm-hmm. And that, as far as we know, is still the position post these new terms of service.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard anything official about that, but I think that's the case. Yeah.
Nathan, some of these things could possibly, and again, I mean, venturing into wild speculation territory here, could it be that some of these changes in the terms of services are possibly related to preparing the ground for esports?
If there is going to be a business venture taking place, I think, with Zwift's platform at that kind of a scale within an esports space, or a space that is using it for entertainment purposes that people are paying for at a large scale, that Zwift has the power to say, hey, you're using our platform for this, and like that's a piece of our pie and we're up to this. I think that's most likely, because like the individual streamer, it would be silly in the gaming industry for Apex to yell at Shroud for having 40,000 people watch him enjoy the game. Like, that would be, why would you do that? Like, that would make no sense. And there's also the reality that there's this guy who started streaming in his laundry room with a green screen, and then was at British Cycling Network. I don't know. Some guy did this thing with a green screen in his laundry room, and now there's esports. So I don't know, 2 or 3 years later, after a lot of rough development and things like that, and back and forth, a lot of anyway.
What is it about laundry and creating Zwift content
Yeah,
that
I
seems
think
to
that's
go
like
so
a
well
thing.
together?
That's like a thing. Like lots of people in laundry rooms, or at least just back rooms. That I think most streaming setups are out of people's houses, like in a back room anyway. So.
Doing laundry is a really important aspect of indoor cycling.
We used to do laundry during our Zwift rides, actually, out of there and stream it. Like I would stream doing the laundry on, anyways.
I would pay for content like that.
So I don't think they're going to be busting anybody for doing laundry. I mean.
You two are approximately both from the Midwest, aren't you? Whenever you say laundry, I hear lingerie.
Oh my god!
I would pay for content like that.
No. There's free websites for that, Greg. Oh my god.
Yeah, can we make it washing rather than lingerie? Anyway, let's just talk about streaming a bit. I mean, I don't do it. Nathan, you've done it for years and years and years, and I know you do it a lot, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you this question, Greg. Why do people stream? Why do they do it?
That's a great question. I'm not even sure I know why I stream. I mean, so let me say this. Having a live audience for a race is a really motivating experience. Yeah. I mean, when I've done live races, let's say at the Kiss Crit finals or CVR, those are really incredible experiences to have people watching you and cheering you on. And I think streaming gives you a little bit of that. Even if there are just a few people watching the stream, you feel kind of motivated not to let them down if it's racing or if you're even doing a workout. You want to get through it because people will see that you quit. So there's that aspect to it. I think that's really it for me.
But can there be anything more distressing and humiliating than streaming yourself on Zwift and looking at the audience counter and it says no viewers?
Yes,
I'm sure you're never in that position. But.
Well, I mean, up front, it was like, so I started streaming Zwift 2015 January, right? And no one was watching Zwift. That was the first Zwift stream, and like I didn't have anything but 0 or 1 viewers for like 6 months. I actually had to start. Yeah, I'd have here and there. John Mayfield was one of my first because he was like, someone's streaming the game. What is going on here? And then what I did was I streamed Zwift and other games because there were people watching other games, and you could then having both of those, you could list it under another game, right? And then people who were looking for that game came in and were like, well, what's that other thing? And then people who were in the Zwift community who happened to be on Twitch or these other platforms who enjoyed either World of Warcraft or Hearthstone, it was at that time, were like, wait, what's that? I want to be a cyclist, or I am a cyclist. And then it kind of crossed over. But once you gain that community, you go to hang out with friends if it's a smaller stream community. You go, that's part of my thing. And then your friends are watching you, and you told them you're doing 2x20s up the mountain, and they know what your fastest time is, and it's super motivating. And all of a sudden you get this schedule, and they become a part of your training schedule. So it's like going to the group ride at that point, at your house, in the laundry room. And at the same time, if it goes a little bit bigger, like there is monetization on Twitch for showing off this game that you're a part of. Mm-hmm. So
I was making $2.50 a month at one point.
You said laundry room again, there, Nathan.
The washroom's over here. I don't know if you know what that means here. So
yeah, I do know what that means. I think that's like bathroom. Over here we call it toilet.
Yeah.
But,
oh gosh.
I wouldn't pay money for content like that.
Some people do, apparently. So I'm told. Asking for a friend. Well, that's a very interesting little exploration of the motivation of streaming, or the psychology of streaming, and largely it seems to be for reasons to motivate yourself, and then you build a little community around it. So now I understand it better. Well, one of my favourite ever tunes is by a band called Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers, and it's called Roadrunner. You two would be far too young to have heard that classic piece of acoustic folk, I think you'd probably describe it as. But Roadrunner is probably a little better known as a cartoon character who, well, runs down the road and says, meep, meep. And there's a roadrunner in Zwift. A few Zwifters have spotted him. Or maybe it's a her. Is Roadrunner he or her? I don't know. But anyway, it has been spotted on the new desert course. Some people have attempted to keep pace and failed. Apparently, this Roadrunner is pretty damn fast. Greg, have you had a sighting?
I haven't. I've never seen the Roadrunner. I've only heard rumors.
Well, Patrick Tan of Team Ascenders, who's a great fan of the podcast and a lovely guy, actually, he's actually caught him on video. So if you Google or YouTube search Patrick Tan Team Ascenders, you'll be able to actually see this Roadrunner. It is very small and it is very fast. Nathan, I think this comes into the category of Easter egg, does it?
Yeah, a little bit for sure. Oh man, how much to share? There's some cool stuff about the Roadrunner a little bit, but it's not specific to the character. It's specific to like game function.
Hang on right there, Nathan Guerra. You can't just say something like that. So you're going to have.
It came. It was a sudden like, oh, that's in my mind. Boom. Yeah. But anyways.
No. You're holding out on us, man. It's only a cartoon character. This is not. This is not a commercial secret.
I think all of the in-game stuff. What you're seeing right there is where you're going along, and the Roadrunner shows up somewhat randomly, or is it from when I don't know.
Yeah. No, it shows. I think it shows up randomly.
Show up randomly, or is it an activation? Is it something that activates when you go through a certain section of the game? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
So, like the banjo guy way back was just always playing, or was he playing because I showed up? You know what I mean?
Well, that's philosophical.
Well, I mean, it's a logic thing in the game, and so like, are we seeing some situations where when you do A, B happens kind of a thing, which is a cool gaming interaction. I'd be excited to see more of something like that if that's what it is. I haven't seen him.
Okay.
Because
are you saying that you may have heard that certain things like that might possibly be coming into the game at some point in the not too distant?
I'm not saying yes or no. I'm saying I've been really excited about that. That's what I've been saying.
I'm confused. One thing I'll say is I really like the idea of trying to keep up with the Roadrunner. That sounds like a really fun
that would be awesome.
Mini game.
That would be awesome.
Right?
Or like the train, like beating the train kind of a
keep
thing.
Pace
like
with the Roadrunner.
Yeah.
Don't get eaten by the Yeti. Remember Ski Free? Is this a Ski Free play? Do you remember Ski Free? Ski Free was a little Ski Free was a little game on like Windows 95, and you'd go down and you'd do like a little slalom. And then eventually the Yeti would start chasing you and it would eat you. That would be such a cool Zwift game.
I wonder if that was the motivation. I'm going to have to ask.
Well, maybe. I mean, the thing is, on the video evidence from Patrick Tan, it's not only fast, it's very fleeting. I mean, I think it was up on screen for like 10 seconds. So kind of by the time you've sighted it and stomped on the pedals, it's gone. But yeah, keeping pace with it would be kind of fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love that as a little mini game in Zwift.
Yeah, that'd be actually like lots of mini bosses, raid bosses. We've been talking around that kind of stuff for a while.
Get that dinosaur going.
There we go. Well, he's kind of looking a little chubby.
He looks a little friendly.
I don't know, friendly. I'm not sure he's a cyclist.
Okay, well, I think we've just convincingly persuaded the audience that there is actually very, very, very little indeed we know about the Roadrunner. So if anybody's got any fantastic intel on the Roadrunner and his behavior, his or her behavior, and when it shows up and what it's all about, well, I, for one, would love to hear it.
Well, it's like, sorry, but one last thing. Scotty v. Roadrunner. And what's the Roadrunner's name?
Alex West?
West?
Well, he's just called Roadrunner, isn't it?
I guess so.
Does Roadrunner have a name?
He's got quite the cadence. Maybe Zach Rogers would be a good name for him.
What the heck? All right, meet me.
Okay, well, we know the update in May gave us a new course, of course, because lots of us have ridden it. But contained within that update were some pretty important other changes. the big one, it seems to me at least, anyway, the big one is the reduction in duration of what's generally considered to be the most powerful power-up, the aero. That's been reduced from 30 seconds to 15 seconds. We'll discuss that in a second. And there have also been some changes, which I must admit I'm struggling to understand, to the algorithm of the super tuck. Greg, with your racing heritage and experience, I'm sure you know all about this. Can you just summarize what's happened to the super tuck and what it will mean to Zwifters and probably especially racers?
Oh boy. Yeah. Okay. So let me try to summarize with the super tuck. The way that the physics was working for the super tuck before now was that when you're descending, there was some kind of braking force on your avatar, right? It's as if the avatar was holding down the brake slightly or something like that.
Right.
And then when you would go into the super tuck, they would just let up on the brake, so that slight braking force would be gone. Instead, now what they've done is change the way the super tuck works, so it actually reduces your drag as if you were using an aero power up, and that's more realistic, essentially, right? So basically, what they've tried to do here is change the way the super tuck actually works in game, right? Like what the code is doing to your avatar in game to make the super tuck physics a little bit more realistic. The way you move, especially with the way that you'll accelerate and decelerate when you're moving in and out of the pack, I think, with the super tuck.
Okay. What do you think that will actually mean? You know, I mean, it must be more than just tidying up a bit of code.
Gosh. I hate to use this word again, but the Zwift physics are, the properties of these things are emergent, right? So, a small change to something like this will only really know the effect by experiencing it. And I don't think we've had long enough to really experience how this is going to affect races. So that's something that we're still discovering. Super tuck is not used that often in racing most of the time because there's just a lot of the races don't have long enough descents for super tuck to be relevant. But, it would be, it's another strategy. If you can find little moments to take a rest, and now the super tuck is improved and you give the really experienced racers more incentive to look for those moments where they can go into a super tuck, I think that can only improve the dynamics of racing.
So I want to say here also, it's event only for racing, right? So this doesn't change everyone's physics in the whole game.
Okay, that's important.
So I wonder why that is. I wonder why.
Someone coined a term curator. Was that you, Simon? Yeah, I think that was you. And I have a little bone to pick on this a little bit. I heard a little bit of people just want to ride trainers and they don't want an interactive game. Like when I heard the curation around this braking thing that was in there, why don't I have up front for the last whatever years the game has been out there, the experience of I stop pedaling, I watch my avatar do a thing, and I'm gaining speed like I would in real life. So whenever I would do that, my assumption was that I was going to travel faster, and I always wondered why I wasn't traveling faster than everybody else around me, and I was trying to interact with the game like my legs were the controllers that they are in real life. In real life, I'm playing a game, which is cycling, and you know what I mean? And I'm trying to game the pack in my bike to get the fastest speed out of it. And so I'm doing the same thing while I'm on the trainer, interacting with my avatar and not getting the interaction I was expecting the whole time. But I didn't even know that one way or another because we didn't have any notes on or any idea on how the game was interacting with us. So I'm a little bit like, wow, for 3-4 years now, I've been doing something that I thought was doing one thing, but it wasn't. And this idea of people just want to ride together on a trainer in groups rather than people maybe a little bit more focused on people actually want to have interactive. And so this is a plus now. I just wish we would have known a lot longer and maybe had more options a little bit earlier rather than maybe a little bit of that curation hand with some assumptions in there. But, I'm excited to see because I don't even know if the community knows that this change is how widespread is this information in the community's mind, and There's one. Go ahead, Simon. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, you make an excellent point there, Nathan, which is, this is quite subtle. The change to the aero power up is kind of less subtle, and we should discuss that because it's actually a little bit easier to understand.
Mm-hmm.
But the bigger point that you're making there, which I think is one, that we've made fairly frequently, is kind of the complete absence of communication around this. Or the almost complete absence of communication. If Zwift have said something about this, I apologize, but I've not seen it.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Jordan Rapp posted in the Zwift Racers for Facebook group a description of the change, and I think did a good job of trying to describe what exactly the change was and why they did it. I still think we need to experience the difference to understand it.
I think it might be more impactful. Is what the last thing I was going to say is just I think it might be more impactful than we've seen, and that like you can force the super tuck at times if you sprint, and then and if you can force an aero power up almost at will.
Yeah, but it has to be going downhill.
Yeah, 2%, 3% or whatever. So, anyways,
it's hard to find.
We got to see if it'll work. I want to go test it now. I want to go race.
We're deep in the weeds here, fellas. We're deep in the weeds.
DITW.
Let's discuss something that's just a little bit easier to understand and actually may have more relevance to more Zwifters, which is the change in duration to the aero power up. I think that's a big change, Nathan, don't you?
It is a big change. 30 seconds to 15 seconds, half time. I always looked at the aero power up in use. Like it's a full 30. I've got a good breadth of time to really take full advantage of it. If I mess it up on one end or the other on timing, it doesn't matter quite as much because it's 30 seconds. But with that little 15, when I was hitting the feather, it would be like, wow, that was over so quick. So you got to time it so well now. Yeah. And it's not going to have as much of an impact. That was the main thing, is that the aero power-up was having too much of an impact on races. It was the only one everyone was looking for. So it kind of changes strategies up a little bit too, I think.
I don't know. I mean,
Greg, is this changed? Yeah. Is this changed across the board, or is this event only? So, I mean, what I'm thinking here is, on my bad days, I've used an aero power-up to stay with a group ride.
Yeah, I believe it is across the board now. Yeah, I think even just riding around, it's a 15 seconds.
Is it? I thought it was only in events. We'll have to check and see. I'm not positive actually. I thought that it was a 30 still on the outdoor, but maybe I got that mixed up with the tuck.
Yeah, I'm not certain either. Anyway, whatever, it is a big change. Greg, I think you've canvassed opinion amongst racers. Just extrapolate that opinion out to ordinary Zwifters if you can, if it does affect them. What do you think the effect of this is going to be mainly?
I don't think this is going to change the dynamics of racing very much. I think hoard the helmet is still going to be the mantra of Zwift racing, because if you want to win a Zwift race, almost all of them come down to a sprint, and there's still no strategy when it comes to power-ups except try and have an aero power-up at the end and use it in the last 15 seconds.
I think it will give more opportunity to people who don't have one, though, because it's not quite as long, and hanging on for 15 on an aero power-up might be a little bit easier than 30 on a power-up. And the way that the pack gains speed against each other with 30 seconds on a bunch of aero power-ups will lower, and those who don't have it can hang on for that much longer, maybe.
Yeah.
We might see a couple more races won by someone who's very strong in a sprint against those who weren't quite as strong but were winning from the aero. Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see.
It also, I think, potentially increases the likelihood of a late attack, like a 1K attack. Because, one thing that would happen in those attacks is the pack has 30 seconds. If a big pack, a bunch of them have aero power-ups, they have 30 seconds of that reduced drag and also riding together in the bunch to really pick up speed at the end. Like you would see, people would get maybe 10 seconds, and then the whole pack just is galloping along with those aero power-ups, and they make up so much ground on a single person who doesn't have the aero power-up active. So that might be one thing that changes in racing. It might, I think it's almost certainly going to at least slightly increase the probability of a successful late break.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't require a response to this because I think we've spent enough time on this, but I just wonder from my own part whether this is yet more laying the ground for the game to become a kind of better racing platform. Dare I mention esports once more? Don't respond. We talked about that enough.
Right on!
Okay, just a little update for Zwiftcast listeners who are interested. And thanks to everybody who responded to me after my unburdening over my health issues last episode. I had some really lovely messages. A lot of messages about atrial fibrillation. Really, really interesting how many people were affected by that. Anyway, my campaign to rebuild my fitness, or some fitness at least, after the winter of health issues I had, is going pretty well, actually. My heart thing appears still to be solved. I'm afraid I've not really made many concessions to the doctor's pleas to take it steady after this apparently successful repair of my atrial fibrillation. And I have been going at it fairly hard. I did almost 900 TSS the other week. What I have found interesting, Nathan, with your coaching hat on, is that the hardest job for my coach at the moment is to kind of hold me back. He's not needing to spur me on. He's just trying to rein me in. I mean, he's setting targets for me, which I find I'm very easily able to achieve, and I feel I can do more. And as a coach, is that common?
It depends on what the individual is looking for. I think you have a little bit more of the competitive edge with your mates, or with just wanting to be a really good cyclist, or being more into you. I mean, you're interested in ASO and RCS. Like, I think that you tend toward that part of the bike shop, right? And so that, I think, is also comes out in coaching. An individual might come to you simply because they want to lose weight. An individual might come to you because they want to be faster on the bike. Those are two very different attitudes. And either being a coach who I like, if you want to come to me for coaching and you just want me to make your cycling fun and like, just to like maybe just get into the shape and just create, I can create some structure. But like, if you're looking for the person who's going to like put that whip out there, I'm not that kind of coach. It depends on the individual. And it sounds like you're the type that's like, I need to go push myself. I need to go push myself. I need to go push myself. And it doesn't feel like you're pushing yourself. You feel like you're not doing enough. Those ones you do sometimes have to hold back because they'll just keep on going, right? They'll just run themselves into a ground and overtrain. And rest is really important so that your maximal amount of stress on the muscles in the body can happen during the right workouts. And if you don't get that, you don't get the best benefits out of training.
Yeah. That was, I have to say, my friend, that was a classic coach's answer, which whatever question you ask a coach, the answer is always, it depends. Greg, do you use a coach?
No, I don't. I have a few people I would call advisors who are coaches, but I haven't hired a coach to track my training. I use a number of tools like Xert and a Perf Pro to kind of like keep track of my stress and things like that. But I don't have a coach.
Have you ever been tempted to have a coach?
I've used a coach for a month before, and it just didn't work out. I think maybe the training philosophy was just so different than what I was used to. Being a self-coach athlete for so long, I thought I had learned what was right for my body, and the coach had different opinions about that. Now, I was probably the one that was wrong, not the coach. But anyway, it didn't work out that well.
It can be a very rewarding relationship, coach and coachee. But
I think that's right.
I think it can also be a very difficult one at times.
I think it has to be the right coach. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's a bit like choosing a girlfriend or a boyfriend, isn't it? You've got to be kind of compatible. Okay, well, that is nearly it for this one, actually. Oh, actually, just before we leave this subject, one of my correspondents, I have to mention him because he also was an AFib sufferer, and he suggested an update to the celebrated formula to describe the ideal number of bikes, which, of course, as everyone knows, is N+1. He suggested that for those with AFib, it should be N+1 plus E, where E is an e-bike. I really liked that. I thought that was very clever. Okay, well, just before we go, before we say goodbye to Greg and Nathan, let's just catch up with Shane, see what he's up to before we round this one off. Okay, last word from Shane over in Melbourne. Hello again, Shane.
How we doing?
Good, still good, thank you. Shane, just a little bit of semi-interesting tech news this week, which was 4i, probably best known for their power meters, bought the very little Canadian startup who had a very innovative trainer called the Stack. We both saw it at Eurobike last year, which works in a very different way from most other trainers and is completely silent. What's your take on that little maneuver?
Look, another industry move that's quite interesting. So we've seen Garmin take over Tax. That was a massive move. And we've recently seen PowerTap be purchased by SRAM, and the Quark conglomerate, I think it's the SRAM group. Yeah. So there's two mergers. And then we've seen another one. So 4i, a power meter company, or 4i's power meter company, have taken on Stack with their Halcyon trainer. Now, Simon, we had a colourful discussion about the colourful trainer that is Stack.
Well, I liked the technology. You hated the look.
So look, fingers crossed, they might paint it a different colour. They might put a little shield on it or something. But my question is around the technology and the longevity of that. Alloy wheels are on the out. People are now moving towards through axles. Their trainer just isn't compatible with most bikes that are being sold at the moment. So they're going to have to redesign that. It might be a grab for some IP, might be a grab for some patents. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe, because 4i very quickly announced kind of a stock sell-off, didn't they? They were selling off, I think, like half price or something, the existing Stack trainers.
50% off, so it's a good deal.
You wonder if they bought some IP and they were actually going to incorporate some of the technology. Maybe they're going to become another training company, 4i.
Well, they've got the tech and they've got the know-how. The guys behind the Stack Halcyon are pretty smart dudes, and they've also got some virtual wind tunnel technology that they use at the same time for bike fits. So, look, I think it's great. I think seeing successful companies sort of get taken over by other successful companies, it can only lead to good things. So, yeah, let's keep an eye on that.
Yeah. Well, no doubt more will emerge, I would imagine, probably at Eurobike. Okay, what's coming up from the Llama Lab, the GP Llama Production Centre? What's the next big video everyone should be watching?
Well, speaking of 4i's, I'm actually looking at their theft tracking technology, which is they're using the Chipolo network, which is similar to the Tile network, that with the latest firmware update to your 4i's power meter, it will then start beaconing out Chipolo-compatible packets or Bluetooth beacons. So if somebody happens to steal your bike or you happen to misplace it, you can mark it as lost. And if anybody on the Chipolo network happens to go by that, you'll get an alert to tell you where it is. Now, whether you go knock on the door and grab it yourself, I'm not quite sure if that's probably the best course of action. But I'm just sort of having a bit of a play around with that versus the Tile network, which is probably more popular. So I've had a 3-week trial running with some hidden little tiles in public, and I've got some results coming up on that very soon.
Well, that's interesting. I've not heard of that. So that's an anti-theft measure, effectively.
Well, it doesn't really stop someone from stealing your bike.
No.
It'll tell you where your bike is, possibly, if somebody has taken it on you.
Yeah, and like you say, it's then what you do with that information. What do you do? Collect up 4 mates and a couple of baseball bats? That might not be particularly advisable, I don't think. But interesting use of technology. Shane, great to chat as ever. Sorry this one's a little bit disjointed due to my ineptitude, let's use that word, rather than something stronger, about travelling to HQ. Anyway, great to talk to you, Shane. Talk to you next time. Thanks, mate.
No worries. Thanks, Simon. Happy travels. Maybe.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Shane. See you, fella.
Cool.
Okay, back with Nathan and Greg. Well, I know the HQ mission this week is top secret, fellas, so I won't press you much or indeed at all on that. Greg, how is your new team going? It is called Team Turbo, isn't it? A very retro feel to your marketing, I've noticed.
Yeah, we call ourselves Turbo Squad. So we're a little bit different than a normal team in that a number of the riders also belong to other Zwift race teams. So for instance, me and Adam Zimmerman are still affiliated with Team Draft, but we've created a squad of riders with some others, from the community, from other teams, just to mix things up a little bit and try something new. The plan was to sort of create a squad who could take on the Canyon ZCC team, who's Canyon's sponsored elite team, and they're incredible. I mean, all their riders did so well in Super League and in the recent KISS community races. So, we wanted to give them a little bit of a run for their money. So we created Turbo Squad to try and do this.
Okay. And are you recruiting, or is this strictly by invite only?
I think we would like to add a few more riders for some upcoming events. So we're sort of keeping our eyes out for people who would fit well in the team.
Okay. Nathan, are you... I know you've been very pressed for time, my friend, and I'm pretty sure your training has suffered as a result. But are you continuing this idea of returning to racing this summer?
Well, I mean, yesterday at ZHQ, I did the number 7, Tour Utopia number 7, Tour Fire and Ice, and wasn't a bad time up the Alp. I got 3rd overall out of 400, and kind of surprised myself a little bit.
You didn't get eaten by the Yeti.
What was your time?
So Tom Hargreaves made me get off the trainer and run to bowling as fast as we could. So I actually, the screen still had the results up, and I just pushed OK and it ended, and I didn't get to see what my time was. I saw a 4, so it was under 50. It was a sub 50, which is that's respectable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's respectable. I still got an extra 10 pounds from too much lifting weights actually right now, which needs to come off. But with that and maybe an extra 20 to 30 watts, I'm pretty confident by late July, August is what I'm shooting for. I can do the second half of the MTB season, I'm hoping. But I'm racing to renovate a house, actually. So that is the main focus on the family front.
Life getting in the way of cycling again. It's terribly frequent. It shouldn't be allowed, I don't think. Okay, well, that's that. That is that for this episode. Thank you very much, boys. Nathan, that Greg fellow, I think he did okay, don't you?
Not bad. He's up and coming. I'm just
Thanks.
kidding.
That was fun.
Excellent to talk to you, boys. Enjoy the rest of the time at HQ. I will be joining the discussion remotely. Rather frustrating. That means I can observe but not contribute, which is a slightly odd position for me, it must be said. But anyway, some interesting things being discussed. Excellent. That's that for this one. Thank you very much, boys. Enjoy the day. Safe travels back home. Check your travel documents. See you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Quick apology for the sound quality of my mic during the conversation with Shane. I managed to enable the wrong mic during that recording, so that was a bit echoey and nasty, but still audible. Sorry about that. And just the usual reminder that whilst we're very grateful to the support that Zwift lend to the Zwiftcast, they don't influence anything we say during recording or publication. Thanks once again for listening. See you next time.